All right, time for an update and forecast on the mountain fire. Just putting this entire video in like a one-sentence summary. It's basically saying that the mountain fire grew rapidly yesterday to over 20,000 acres. There were some injuries on the fire. There was over 100 structures destroyed, but it does look like conditions are improving now. So just looking at where this fire is, you can see it's southeast of Santa Barbara. Some of the cities that we see around here: Oxnard, Thousand Oaks, and then it's as you get into the Santa Susana Mountains where you see this fire perimeter. And really what caused this was strong offshore winds. In this area, they often call them sundowners because the winds will actually pick up as the sun goes down because they're no longer fighting the winds that go up slope during the day. So then I was looking at some of the weather stations. There are some 50, 60 mile per hour winds in this area, and you can actually see the fingers on the fire perimeter from where the fire was pushing it. So winds from the northeast would push it down to the southwest. Then you can see this large spot fire that happened over here in the Camarillo Hills, where burning ember gets picked up and tossed like that. But just looking at the numbers on this fire, it's up around 20,000 acres, 5% containment. Now this is where the containment number doesn't actually tell us all that much on the fire, because I would say at this point, while we do still have some things to worry about, especially the fact that we still have a red flag in this area, it does look like the worst is behind us on this fire. You see this red flag doesn't actually cover the entire fire perimeter. It's mostly over the mountains, so up in the higher elevations, and right off the bat we can see that lasts until November 8th at 11 a.m. So we still have some strong winds overnight tonight, but then the winds are actually going to calm down and even shift direction tomorrow and push moisture into the fire. So what led to a lot of the rapid fire spread being the strong winds yesterday, and then even into, there was some growth throughout the day today. Conditions will significantly improve tomorrow, and we'll get into the weather forecast in a moment. First, I should just mention, even though I'll say some good news in this video, there's still a large number of evacuation orders and warnings in place. I never really go through those in these videos because by the time you're watching this, the orders might have changed, but just know you can find that on the CAL FIRE website. And I found something new on the CAL FIRE website. I don't know how new it is, but it's new to me. They now have a 3D map that you can click on right there, and it's going to take you to pretty high resolution perimeter. Now, the first thing that just popped into my mind that I should say is, as you zoom in, you're able to see like where this fire perimeter went over a large number of structures. But just because maybe a structure is within this fire perimeter doesn't mean that it's completely destroyed. I'd listened to the CAL FIRE briefing earlier today. I believe the link for that is somewhere on the CAL FIRE page here. So yeah, I think it's the Ventura County Incident Information Source. You could watch their update. I think they said the incident management teams are on the ground trying to go into all the properties to see what kind of damage has been done, but that kind of work takes some time. And right now they're saying around 80 structures damaged, and I believe they said around 132 structures destroyed. So as always, just thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who has been impacted by this fire. So that's the current fire perimeter, but what I often like to do as well is look at where the more recent heat has been, because it doesn't really tell you all that much to just hear 20,000 acres, because a lot of that was yesterday's growth, and then you might be thinking, okay, but where's the fire actually burning actively right now? And this is always the first place I go to find that information. This is CalTopo. Yellow is going to be your fire like yesterday. Orange, think like 12 hours ago. Red, think within the last 12 hours. So right off the bat, you can see where we had that big spot fire yesterday that got pushed by those strong northeasterly winds. You're not seeing any red stars down there. So that means there was not as much heat on that part of the fire throughout the day today. Then where you do see some of that red is a little bit on the west side here, but more so on the northeastern side of the fire. It definitely looks like that was where we had the satellites picking up the most heat. But if we look at the structures, You can see the largest amount of structures are around that spot fire, so that's most likely where the largest amount of the damaged and destroyed numbers are coming from. We do have some structures still on this northeastern side, but that's where I'll emphasize again that the maps that we're looking at don't take into account some of the firefighting operations on the ground, where they'll go into some of these areas and they'll start putting defensible space around the homes. Hopefully you already did that throughout fire season, but I shouldn't say not expecting much growth as we move forward, but just much improved conditions compared to what we had yesterday. So looking at the wind plot, it does still look like we have that northeasterly wind. So it is still offshore right now. We'll look at the weather forecast in a moment. Before we get into that, I just want to turn on the current heat detections. Now, I'm always a bit hesitant to do this because it always overestimates how much heat is coming off of the fire, but it does give us a good idea of where some of the heat is. And it seems to be in the same place that those red stars were showing. But this information is, I believe, within the last 15 minutes. One thing I will say is that it's yellow squares. That means it's kind of weak heat coming off of the fire. When I first looked at this fire yesterday, this entire area was like bright red squares. So looks like less heat coming off. We can also just back up that information by looking at the satellite imagery today. You see some of that smoke coming off of the fire, but not nearly as much smoke as was coming off of it yesterday. And then if we want to actually see video of the fire, you can see this little spot down here. And then as we get into the afternoon, that's when things typically get hotter and drier. As your fuels get drier, it's easier for the fire to spread. And then just based on how much that smoke is moving, you can see that we did still have some strong winds throughout the day today. And that little area right there seems to have flared up earlier this afternoon. And then as we get into tonight, you'll be able to have a better view. It always, again, kind of makes it look like the fire is more active than it actually is, but that's just kind of how that camera lens works right there. Another thing we can do is actually check out what the weather is doing on the ground right now. So here's South Mountain right here. Again, we're in the Santa Susana Mountains. And the red numbers are your winds. And that's actually where it's really encouraging. 5 miles per hour, 4 miles per hour, 7 miles per hour, 8 miles per hour. That is not very high at all. But if we actually click into here, you can see max gust today, 33 miles per hour, 34. What about this one? 35. And then if we go into the observations and look at yesterday, this is where I was seeing some numbers around 40, 50, even 60 miles per hour. Yeah, you can see some of those 55s right there. So winds, a lot stronger yesterday. The forecast models, even though we were just looking at observations on the ground and it doesn't look like there's much wind out there, but I will say the forecast models are still showing some strong winds overnight tonight. Now keep in mind these are showing wind gusts. I mean, it shows the winds coming down pretty significantly. So those are wind gusts and it's showing 12 miles per hour. That's at 10 p.m. tonight. If you look at sustained winds, 5 miles per hour. So that's actually pretty close to what we're actually seeing right now. So looks like the models did pretty well there. What I want to see though is what the wind gusts are doing tomorrow. So as we click into tomorrow, we'll go to 4 p.m. This is where you see the winds change direction. So while in the past we had a northeasterly wind, so the reason a northeasterly wind is bad is because it pushes in warmer, drier air because it's coming from inland areas that are warmer and drier. Tomorrow, look at the wind direction right there. First off, it's not as windy, 20 mile per hour gusts, but it's also coming from the ocean, so that actually takes some moisture from the ocean and pushes it in. And one way to see the impact that has, you look at the humidity here, throughout the day today, 8% near our fire, and then as that, it's still pretty dry overnight tonight, so we could still see some growth overnight tonight. But then as we get into tomorrow, let's see what happens. See how that moisture starts pushing in over the fire? And then it's going to do it even more on Saturday. Maybe not great relief on Saturday. But certainly better conditions. mostly because it's an onshore wind instead of offshore. So, basic summary there. We do technically still have that red flag warning until 11 a.m. tomorrow, but it does look like the winds have calmed down a lot right now, and it's the winds that were the large driver of this fire. So, not expecting much continued growth as we go forward, but we do still have some heat on the fire. We do still have a large number of evacuation orders. So, I'm going to keep my eye on it. Certainly still dry out there, but it looks like things are improving. With that being said, just thoughts and prayers again to everybody who has been impacted by the mountain fire. And hopefully this video is helpful. If there's any big updates, I'll have them coming your way. And thanks for watching.